vicissitudes of life, and the rescue or the true remedies for our suffering lies squarely within our purview to access, if we really get or understand how to access it, and the development that's required to access our freedom. And so today I thought, because this is a hard teaching, and I want you to know it's not me, that I'm going to give my what you might call my authority to share it in this way, so that you don't think that I'm just, coming up with something. On to the what causes our suffering, which is agitation or gratification. Agitation or gratification, both cause the suffering. So when the mind is distressed, there is suffering, and when the mind is happy, then the mind is also disturbed. And I'd like to try to tie that into the heart. In the 1960s, we started doing heart transplants. In 1991, and we thought by now we know everything there is to know about the heart and how the heart functions, and we're pretty good at, taking one out and dropping one in and all of that. But in 1991, there was a further discovery about the heart that has to do with the vagus nerve and also the nerves that move down the spine. And what they discovered was that we actually have two brains. One is in the head and one is in the heart. And that the information transfers between the heart and the head, and there can be a unification of the head and heart with learning or with development. But they also discovered that the communication flowing from the head to the heart is about a quarter of what flows from the heart to the head. And that's why the mystics and the sages of old continually deal with us about cultivating the heart. That's why compassion and altruism is in every wisdom teaching. And that the head is part of our the cells of the brain are part of our evolutionary development, concerned mostly around survival. And so we find our truest self in the heart. And so many of us have difficulty connecting the heart to the head, because the heart, another way to kind of understand it, not completely but partially, is around intuition. And typically intuition has been seen or understood as a feminine aspect, a girly quality, and has been it had not been investigated, appreciated, and anything that happens that bears out to be true, having arisen from the heart, we consider anecdotal until 1991. And I'll tell you what happened in 1991 was, from time to time when they would do heart transplant, someone would wake up and say, I want Kentucky Fried Chicken, but they never ate like that. Okay. And so, and then there was, it started with the woman who did that, and she went and tried, because the organ is anonymously donated, but she tracked down where she got her heart from through obits, and and it was a small town, and on and on. And they found out that the guy that she got the heart from, that was his main diet, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that one was like the beginning of these anecdotal, collection of stories around heart transplant patients or recipients. But then something extraordinary happened. There was an 8-year-old, and she got the heart of a 10-year-old girl. And this girl had been murdered. And they discovered her. They heard her screaming in the woods. By the time somebody got to her, the assailant was gone and she was dead. Her parents donated her organs. They rushed her off and dismembered her or whatever they do to get the parts that they need for someone who is alive. And that was the end. But this girl started having nightmares. And they took her to a therapist because of the nightmares. And the therapist recognized that this wasn't a nightmare, that this was a memory. And they brought in a forensic sketch artist, and she began to tell the story of this nightmare she'd have every 2 or 3 nights. And it was the story about where they found her. Then they went on, like this man chasing her in the dark, and she's running towards this house, and she's almost there, but before she can get there, and the man says something to her before he kills her, and she was saying what the man said. And then she saw the man's face and she described it, and they sketched it out. Okay, so from that sketch, unbeknownst, of course, to the girl and her family in the beginning, they began to search their databases and they came up with a match. And when they brought this guy in for, questioning with a little bit of pressure, he confessed. And he told the story, and it was the same story this little girl was dreaming. And he used the exact same words before he killed her that the little girl told him in her dream this man says. And on the basis of that, and it was the first case in criminal history that a person was accused, tried, convicted, and sentenced on a basis like this. But the evidence was so overwhelming, and then in conjunction with his confession, when he confessed he didn't know these other things, or maybe he would have had a different, the trial could have gone differently. But that was it. So now science is paying attention. And that's when they started investigating further. And that's not like these things just got there, like the vagus nerve just got there, or like this bundle they have 40 specialty of cell that's in the heart that is like a brain cell, but it's in the heart. And so there's a Christian saying, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's why I listen very carefully when people speak. And if they come back and say, well, I didn't mean it, or I didn't mean it like that, I know that it's out of the abundance of the heart. It overwhelms. It makes us oops. It makes us speak up when when maybe we should have held our peace and counted to 10 or something. But it's a good indicator because it is the eruption, And so the Buddha understood this, and he gave us training whereby if the heart has been wounded or hurt, there is a training we can undergo to transform that heart. And then the heart will send a different survival message to the brain. Is everybody with me? Okay. So I wanted to go a little bit into how he talked about it. Because when we get this and when we look at the languaging around the way he spoke might be different than the scientific data and the proofs that they've discovered concerning the 40 cells in the heart that communicate 3 times more to the brain than the brain sending a message to the heart, which is why it's so difficult, say, to forgive if your survival has been threatened or you feel that you've been threatened in a certain way. Like, I'm trying to love them, though. I'm trying to forgive them, though. It's difficult. It takes longer. It takes more effort because the messaging coming top down to the heart is so much less than what is possible to move from the heart to the head. And so there takes a cultivation, and there takes a training. And so I'd like to start with what he says about the speaker of the Dharma. He says, I'll skip the introductions that I usually read. Sitting to one side, that bhikkhu said to the Buddha, Venerable Sir, it is said a speaker on the Dharma. In what way, Venerable Sir, is one a speaker on the Dharma? And he said, Bhikkhu, if one teaches the Dharma for the purpose of revulsion towards form, feeling, perception, consciousness, and mind objects, for their fading away in cessation, one can be called one who is a speaker on the Dharma. If one is practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards form, feeling, perception, consciousness, and mind objects, one can be called one who is practicing in accord with the Dharma. If through revulsion towards form, feeling, perception, consciousness, and mind objects, through their fading away in cessation, one is liberated by non-clinging, one can be called one who has attained nibbana in this very life. So now when we start talking about revulsion for form, already there's some backlash. Brain is talking, or about our thoughts, or about our feelings, or our perception of things. Brain is already going with the yeah, but don't we need this to be able to function in this world? I mean, it's we have all of our objections, and so he starts to speak to us, and I want to give it to you from here instead of my conversation today, because I want you to really get the Buddha's thread. He said, Bhikkhus, this samsara is without discoverable beginning. A first point cannot be found of beings roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. He said, suppose, Bhikkhu, a dog tied to a leash was bound to a strong post. If it walks, sits close to that post or pillow. If it stands close to that post or pillow. If it sits down close to that post or that pillow. If it lies down close to that post or that pillow. So too, Bhikkhus, the uninstructed worldling regards form as this is mine, this I am, this is myself, just as the dog who is tethered on a leash, bound up to a strong post or a strong pillow. And he regards perceptions and volitional formations and consciousness the same way. This is mine, this I am, this is myself. And if he walks close to his concern for those 5 aggregates, or his sense of identity tied up in those 5 aggregates. If he stands close to his identity being tied up in his form, in his feeling, in his perception, in his consciousness, in his mind, in his thoughts. He says that if he sits down close to being, to clinging to those 5 aggregates. And if he lies down close to clinging. Therefore, because one should reflect often upon one's own mind thus. For a long time, this mind has been defiled by craving, by hatred, by delusion, and through the defilements of minds, the being becomes defiled. With the cleansing of mind, the being becomes purified. And so he talks about this non-self, and he says form is non-self. Feeling is non-self. Consciousness is non-self. Mental formations, non-self. Perception is non-self. And so one says, so the question came up, well, how can you know anything apart from being tied to these 5 aggregates? And how can you know something else if we are tied to the 5 aggregates? And he said, destruction of the taints is only for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know and who does not see. He needs to know such is form, such is its origin, such is its passing away. And the same for the 4 other aggregates. When one does not dwell devoted to development, even though such a wish may arise in him, oh, that my mind might be liberated from the taints by non-clinging, he said it is impossible to do. And so our development depends, or our progress depends on our development. Our development depends on the effort that we put into it. And part of that effort is the effort of overcoming or moving against our habitual tendency, our habitual way of viewing, our habitual way of knowing, our habitual way of acting, our habitual way of saying or doing or thinking or being. That's what this practice is. I mean, like, if you don't want to do that, then this is not the right practice. There's many other types of practices that you can do. But he speaks of where this teaching fits within that framework of the many different practices, training, spiritual development that we can undertake. He said, I teach you the things that should be fully understood. He said there are some things that are partially understood, and that part that is partially understood will have good benefit and be of good value, but the relief, the ultimate overcoming is not possible because it has not been fully understood. He said, I teach you the things that should be fully understood, full understanding, and the person that has fully understood. He said, listen to that. And what is full understanding? It is the destruction of craving, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion. This is called full understanding. Sometimes when we're working on breaking down something in ourselves, we know, like, we got a stony heart around this issue, but then we start looking at, like, what is right. But the thing is that if I'm trying to do what is right out here, and in that process I recognize a stoniness of heart in here, I need to leave that and I need to work with this. This is where the work then needs to be done. Now if I can do what needs to be done out there and my own heart doesn't rise up and condemn me, I'm in a good space. I should move forward with that. But when the heart does rise up, then we need to stop right where we are and tend with it, because the work that we do might even be a good work, but the work is still defiled. The work will still not have its complete work. The efforts, the good that we would do, we would not be able to do. And so if everyone had this understanding, what a wonderful world it would be. But because we don't, whatever parts we do understand, we are invited to walk in that, to act on that. You can see this is a great responsibility. You can't be a Paul Parrot with this and make any progress or get anywhere. It's not so much the outer knowledge that we get, but this is man knowing thyself. And he says that when we turn inward, most of us abandon when we get to a certain part because too much is asked of us by ourselves. If we really want to be free, you got to work on that. Like, I'm willing to do this, and this, but not right now. Not right now for that. And that's okay. But just know. And we don't have to hide it. We don't have to deny it. But we do have to acknowledge it within ourselves. We have to just know. You say, there's no danger in just knowing. There's no danger in acknowledging to oneself. It's not a beat down. It's not a flagellation. It is a recognition from a space that puts us on a trajectory for total release. And so the good news about this is that it is available to us. But it's available to us to the extent that we are willing to cultivate and to develop it. And so he says, I understand why you feel like you feel sometimes. And he said it's because of gratification. He said, if there were no gratification in form, beings would not become enamored with it. But because there is gratification in form, beings do become enamored with it. If there were no danger in form, beings would not need to experience revulsion towards it. But because there is danger in form, beings experience revulsion towards it. If there were no escape from form, beings would not escape from it. But because there is escape from form, beings can escape from it. And he went on to talk about gratification in feeling, in perception, in consciousness, in thoughts and volitional formations. So it says, for so long as beings have not directly known as they really are, the gratifications as gratifications, the dangers as dangers, the escape as escape, then they have not escaped from this world with its devas, Mara, Brahmas, from this generation of ascetics, from Brahmins, its humans, because we have not become detached from it, released from it, nor do we dwell with a mind rid of barriers. But when we have really known all this as it really is, when we have let down our guard of fear, well, if I give this up, who shall I be in the future? If I give this up, what will happen to me now in the present? It's always something with something. I got a call this morning, and the person has to have, they wanted her to have open heart surgery, and she was in a tizzy, and she said, I absolutely won't have it. I absolutely won't have it. And I went back and I told them I won't have it. I just can't do it. I can't do it. So then they called me back today. That was a couple of weeks ago. They called me back today and said they looked over my things and I am a candidate for a second type of surgery that would be a little bit less invasive than cracking open your chest. And it would be done. They would send a tube up through the groin. And now she said, I can't do it. I said, so what are you saying? Are you calling me to make your funeral arrangements? Or, what is it that you're asking me for? And she said, She said, no, I don't want to die. I said, okay then. Well, great. We got that part settled. Okay. And so then we started talking about, I said, you'll think, she says, but I'm worried. I said, what are you worried about? She said, what I'll be like in the future. I said, what you need to worry about is what you like right now. And right now, they're telling you you won't have a future unless you do this. And so the pain and the anguish that you're in right now, the breathing mechanism that you complain about, the chest pains, the fear, all of that is right now. And so I said, if you could not be so attached to your views, to your future pacing of what I'll be like in the future, don't you see this could be something I just have to do? It could be as easy as going to the store. Just like when my father died, the voice spoke and said, I can make this as easy as going to the store for you. I said, if you can make it so. And it was just like that. And there was never any suffering, any anguish. And I loved him more than I loved my husband. But there was something that rose up. I called it the voice of the Holy Spirit. Somebody else might call it intuition. You can call it something. You don't have to call it anything. Don't care. But the problem, the thing is that this thing arose in that moment, and I was able to take a little bit of that wisdom and use it to get me over something. They said she's going to have a nervous breakdown for sure. I absolutely did not. And that's why the Buddha says when he talks about walking with householders, and said one who understands things this way, he doesn't walk with householders. What he means, he doesn't think the way householders think, because a householder's life is consumed with what we'll eat, what we'll wear, where we'll go, what we'll do. It's consumed with relationships. It's consumed with careers. It's consumed with one-upmanship. It's consumed with these things. And it's hard to kick against the pricks. It's hard to cultivate the kind of mind that could relax and release these things. When I went to the doctor day before yesterday, he took my pressure down 10 years ago when I first started going to him, or 12 years ago. I was earlier in my, you kind of go like an airplane moving on the tarmac, and you have to get up to a certain speed, and then you have to pull back, on the rudder and I forget now, it's been a long time, ailerons. I was taking flying lessons, and when you do all the things, you have to have thrust to have lift, you have to have a certain speed. There's a number of conditions must be present. Any one of them, then you either will not have lift, or if you have lift, you will have quickly come down. All these things have to be in the right proportions and the right amount. But when you have it, then you have lift. And that's why the theory or the truth of aerodynamics supersedes, or the law of aerodynamics supersedes the law of gravity. Supersedes it. It doesn't nullify it, but it can operate in a way that surpasses or suppresses the law of gravity when all the conditions have been met. So in the beginning, we don't meet all the conditions. And sometimes doing the things that will allow us to grow and develop, frankly, it doesn't feel good right now. Rob said to me so many times, like, I'm not feeling good about you right now. All this week while he was in, I think he might have, did you use the H word? I'm hating you right now, but he kept persevering. He kept pressing through the uncomfortableness, because we have our safeguards, our tendencies, the things that we do so that we won't feel to dismiss or suppress the feeling that we don't want to have. And so part of this is being able to come to the place that we can tolerate the feeling, seeing it only as a feeling. It is not me. And it is temporary. It's gonna pass the same way it came up. It arose, it abides, and it passes. And how long it abides depends on the amount of clinging that we have and the amount of craving for something else and the amount of aversion towards this. And so this is a practice of noticing when that clinging is there, when that aversion is there, when that gratification is saying yippee and doing somersaults that make us press down and say, yeah, this is me, I did this. It's noticing that. Now, the Buddha says that when all of that has been suppressed for little periods of time, we start to find out that there's no danger in those waters. In fact, there is some kind of experience that even surpasses the gratification and the pleasure, the temporary pleasures that these normal ways of being give us. He says, but we think like this is such a good feeling, I don't want anything else. He said, but there is something even greater than that. There's something even, and that it can be apprehended here and now. And when one enters into that space, it is called nibbana. So, and he says this by way of to give confidence, to try to put these things to the test. He asks us to do something. He talks about what it takes to be able to get into that space. And listen to what it takes. Of all the things that the Dharma talks about, he says, there the Blessed One said this, bhikkhus, develop concentration. A bhikkhu who is concentrated can understand things as they are. And what does he understand as it really is? The origin and passing away of form, the origin and passing away of feeling, the origin and the passing away of perception, the origin and the passing away of volitional formations, the origin and the passing away of consciousness. So he gives us one little simple thing to do. And he shows us like the doorway into this place where we come to the absolute stilling of thought and where all sense of all understanding of how things are based on the information we've taken in through the sense gates, where we see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and think, all of that falls away, and then we enter into a different, the fullness of reality. And there is something that enters into that fullness. It is not a nothingness like nothing. There is a something. And there are no words for the something, but it can be experienced. And once one experiences it, one knows, even when one comes out and just acts awful, if they have touched it, they've tasted it, they know there is an abiding place where this one who can be consumed by the vicissitudes of life can enter. And they have a different vision of what it is to be alive in the world. And the more often they touch that fount, the more often they touch that space, the more equipped they become to not only handle the vicissitudes of life, but to not even consider them vicissitudes. You know, they are it's just life. And so they can go through up times and down times the same. So 10 or 11 years ago, it might have been 12 years ago, when I first found this doctor I was going to, and I had hypertension, and and he wanted to put me on this medication, and everybody's on it. They're not doing good, but like, what you gonna do? And I tried it, and I didn't like it. It made me sick. I said, I can't do this. He said, well, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna use my proved weapons. I'm gonna master this meditation thing. Now I'm still working on it. It's not mastered. But that's what I did. So he said, I just wanted to tell you, I wanted to ask you what you do about your pressure, and how you brought your pressure down. So he said, life must be going good for you. I said, I'm in the most stressful time of my life right now. I can tell you the truth. That is really the truth. And I said, but it sits there, and that's life. So there's a place that it can come close, but it can't touch me, because I practice abandoning the self that's based on form, feeling, perception, consciousness, and mind objects. He said, can you tell me more about this? Because my pressure is something like, I think it was today, it was yesterday, it was 112 over 70, and it used to be something like 220 over 100, or I was like right there. I was right there on the edge, and I didn't come to the Dharma for that. That was like, Dharma was like a spiritual pursuit, and health was health. I didn't come because I wanted to be healthy. I didn't come because I didn't want to stress. I wanted to come because I wanted to be like Jesus, and I didn't know any Christians who were. So I said, okay, what we do now is, you don't ask a disciple what the master meant. You go find another master and ask that master what that master was talking about. Maybe he can explain it to you in another way that you can get it. And so that's what I did. I was seeking another master, and I wanted to look at the way he said it to see like what I might have missed, from what Jesus said. I was like, Jesus, I ain't got no problems with you. It's these people I got a problem with, and then so then I go to the Buddha. He said, no, you don't have a problem with them. It's you have a problem with. And so now he's pointing me here. It might be somebody tells me about something else after this. But first I'll work at mastering this. And so I talked to him a little bit more. And then I said, you're not charging me right for this. I mean, this conversation. Because they bill you. They bill you on your, and I know, because I get the bills. I look at them and I'm like, wow, he's gone up. So I generally don't ask too many questions. I Google. And when I go in armed with equipment. I'm asking him the questions, So anyway, we talked about something that he felt could help me get my diabetes under control. And he said, I think you could do it once and for all, where you'd be off, be off completely, And just 2 years ago, this was a doctor telling me, once a diabetic, always a diabetic. I was like, no, I don't believe that. It's just I'm not disciplined enough to do the things that I need. And I'm not going to work on that this year either. So give me the medicine. Next year, I'm going to work on it. So that's this year. I'm ready to work on it. So I went and I talked to him about doing a 30-day water fast, because I did one before and everything went wonderful. He said, Pannavati, he said, I would never encourage a person to do a 30-day fast, but I know you can do one. He said, but here's the problem. It's after you get off the 30-day fast. It wasn't 6 months before your diabetes was back where it was before you did the fast, because you didn't do the things afterwards that you needed to maintain your health. So he said, I will approve a 30-day fast. I know you're going to do it anyway if you want to do it, but the question is, what do you need to think about what you're going to do after the 30 days. Last time, on day number 30, when I ended that fast, I went and had a full course meal. I didn't do that like you gotta like do soups, clear stuff. I went and had full course meal. Pannavati said, you're gonna die. I said, no, I'm not. I've been waiting 29 days for this, and I'm ready. And so then he said, would you mind talking with he said, I have some other clients and they meditate. He said, but I don't know what kind of meditating they're doing, but they might be interested in hearing about the kind you're doing. I said, yeah, I will do that. He said, okay, well, let me call them and I'll get back to you, but this is my advice that they might want. Now, what encouraged me was after my fall, and I'm saying this to show you how you should evaluate things going on in your life and the role that the Dharma should be taking in your life. It's not just something to hear a few hours a week and then we just go on with our life, but we have to really integrate it into our every moment. There's hardly a moment that goes by that I'm not thinking about what the Dharma says about this moment and what's showing up. And I might rise to the occasion and I might fail, I might not. But there's not a time I'm not thinking about it. And not, again, I say, with a sense of condemnation, but the sense of having a friend that sticks closer than a brother, right there with me, rising up in my heart, gently nudging, talking, instructing, saying, you can do that, but it's going to hurt. Not today, but next week. So and then leaving me to make my choice. It's like that. When you come to know the Dharma in this way, it takes on a different quality, and your life takes on a different quality, even when you fail at your best attempts, or even if you're not up to attempting. So he said, concentration. And the way he leads us into this concentration is so simple that we think it's not even worth anything. We think it's not valuable. First he says, we think, we have this monkey mind and we're so distracted by this and this and this and this and this. He says, before we practice concentration, we live vicariously through that. That's all we've known. How to evaluate what's happening right now based on what I see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and think. That's my litmus for evaluating the moment. He said, but once you embark upon the eightfold path, he says one needs to investigate what is right thought and right speech. What is right meditation? And what is, right concentration? What is right view? What is right? And so we undergo the study. Once we have studied what it is, how do I apply that to myself and to my life, to this moment when I'm feeling like just knock one person out? How do I pull back? How do I restrain myself when I'm thinking about a world on fire? How do I console myself when my partner is dying? How do I go on and get up the next morning and move forward in the world when my relationship is dissolving? How do I? That's the question. And the Dharma needs to answer those questions for you. And when they have been answered for you, when you have found the path, if you stay on the path, all of those get great. Here's the good thing about it. It doesn't just, I play this game. I'm trying to improve my mind, my sense of logic and stuff because of the concussions that I had. And so there's some games, if you learn the strategy, if you push this button, it destroys or blows up that one square. You push this button if others are around it in a certain way, and it blows up 20 squares. So you can either get 1 point or you can get 20 points, and the object is to get the most points. So you're always looking to see where I can blow up the most squares with one button. But the Dharma is like that. When you get something with the Dharma, you can apply it here, and here. And, so it's not like, boy, this is a trudging way, one thing at a time. It's not like that. Because our whole view and the way information is organized shifts. So the whole the structure of appearances change for us. And we no longer think of something this way. We think of something a different way. So when you come back to a person and say, well, I didn't do this because I felt shame. I didn't do this because I was angry. I didn't do this because and we can come up with any one of those that we want, But the reason, what hindered us was our clinging to and our attachment to our sense of whatever, shame, anger, jealousy, whatever. And so he says, allow there to be that destruction, that fading away, that giving up, that cessation, that relinquishment of the craving and the desire for that which you put together, lump together, and call myself. That's it. So craving is the builder of the house. He says form is non-self. Feeling is non-self. Perception is non-self. Consciousness is non-self. Form, feeling, perception, consciousness. And thoughts, non-self. All of this is impermanent. It comes and it goes. But there is something when all of that falls away that actually is us. And he says that we should find that. And when we do, we will be free. So we have to be careful about our words and our understandings around self and non-self. And we saw a wonderful Dharma movie last night. It was so enjoyable to hear everyone's comments and what they got from it. It was so instructive. I learned so much last night because everyone touches the Dharma from a different side and a different perspective. And the one who didn't want to come last night was the one we gave her it was this, yeah, we gave it to her and it was just so amazing, but she didn't want to come because she didn't want to feel like being put on the spot in an intimate situation because she's growing and developing in intimacy, where she won't be hurt because the heart has been wounded. And we're saying it's no danger here. We will love you whole. And so now, so she was sick. I'm like, you feel it in your body, but that's a mental sickness. So you try to come. And she came, and then she told me, oh, Venerable, and she learned something about herself, her ability to make an assessment about things, to perceive something, to understand something deeply, to know something about Dharma that frees her. You see, but this is a work each one of us has to do for ourselves. And when it happens, all of us benefit because we are truly interconnected. And so the wisdom that was shared last night after the movie, it was truly wonderful. And I thank you for it. And so this simple thing, we spend our last 5 minutes just getting lots of things might happen ultimately. There was one time there was so many bells and whistles going on in there, I didn't know what to do. It was like a I don't know, fireworks show, exposition, transporting. It was some of everything happening in there. But it's almost as if the silence is you. It's almost as if, not the nothingness, but the no thingness, which is that space out of which everything manifests, that is you. Touching it, different teachers have explained it different ways, given us different sides of the elephant to touch, to get a full idea. But if we can trust the Dharma and have some confidence, he used the word fragile. He said, form is fragile. Feeling is fragile. And it's true. We are so fragile. But when we get into this space, we just see form as form. A feeling as a feeling. A thought as a thought. And I can put it up against what I know about the Dharma and know the trajectory that I should take. And this is the investigation. Investigation, brings with it trial and error. That's how discoveries are made. And then one day you say, Eureka, I got this, the right combination. And you put that, and that one little thing is fixed. Then another little thing over here, and another little thing over here. And one day, if we live long enough, being diligent in our cultivation, we'll have all the pieces of the puzzle, and we'll see the full picture. But in the meantime, we'll find ourselves becoming stronger, more content. We'll be durable. We'll be able to tolerate a fault. We'll be able to overlook a slight. We'll be able to accept responsibility when we don't make the cut. And we can just say, my bad, I messed up right there. We can be able, just the freedom to be able to do these things, and not be afraid of the consequence. And the consequence is not always, like because you fessed up, then everything's going to be okay. You might have to go through the repercussion of that. And it might not be comfortable or pleasant. But this all goes with getting out of the kiddie pool. And then soon you'll be able to help others. You can guide others not with actually outwardly doing something. You can guide others by your own conduct. Yeah, your own conduct. You can, instead of being the barometer that registers the pressure, or the thermometer that measures the temperature, you can be the thermostat that sets it. You choose. You choose. But this is the wonderful opportunity that the Dharma offers. Yeah. So, in meditating, the very first steps is just having in oneself an idea that this aggregate, this heap that I call me, is not worthy to be called me. Form is not me. Feeling is not me. Perception, that's just my way of seeing things. It's not me. Consciousness is not me. Thoughts, not me. These are just manifestations that rise and fall, like the wave cresting in an ocean. But there's really no wave that is permanent and concrete, can be that you see cresting is still ocean. But as conditions hit it, it causes a temporary appearance. Whatever you might be going through in your life today, a temporary appearance. The way you might be thinking about something at this moment, a temporary arising. The view that we are holding about something. The mind can change when more information comes in, or we decide it's too much to keep holding on to this. And it will cease to exist. But there is something that is there, and to apprehend it, we must move beyond the realm of phenomena that is available to us here and now in this life. The Buddha said, I'm teaching you this much when he scooped up leaves in a forest. He said, but I know this much. So, what will you know? What will constitute your great awakening? Will it be this much, or will it be this much? It's up to you. So when you're at home practicing this week, he gave the many different meditation subjects, and he gave some different ways of instructing in meditation, but in developing concentration, pretty much he was set each place there was a discourse on it. Of course, we don't know how much of this he really said. This was 2,500 years ago. Stuff wasn't even written down for 500. And then when they did it, they changed it to its own language that the Buddha didn't even speak Pali, okay? So I'm not learning much of it. But there it is. See what we can do with what we have. And I tell you, if you reach far enough, touch far enough inside, then the part of you that is connected to ultimate reality, where all the wisdom lies, it's like a feeder, like a siphon. Like when I was young, I used to run out of gas a lot for my car, so we were always having to do something, to get the car running again. Okay, but it's like that, and you start sucking on that hose, and you got to take your mouth off soon enough, though. It ain't gonna be pretty, but you get it started, and then you take some from your friend's car and put in your car. Gasoline was only 33 cents then, and you get in your car and you get enough gas to go to the gas station. So that's what I'm talking about. We can pull up enough within ourselves, and it will start to lighten the path, and we can see not everything, but we can see enough to just take the next step. That's all that's required. Just take the next step for you. So he says, just getting in a place and firmly establishing in one's mind that all of the appearances that are present for me has been put together through faulty mechanisms that don't tell the whole story. And so for now, I set aside what I do know. I lay down my conceptualizing mind. I give up the conceit I am, the pride of life, and I just sit. Emptying the mind and turning the mind to the breath. Now, the breath is actually something that you feel. So it doesn't really take any kind of thinking about the breath. But the reason why he adds thinking is to help still the mind. So he says, turn your attention to the breath. Just breathing in and breathing out. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to hold it. You don't have to slow it down. It will slow down by itself when you turn your attention to it. It says just developing an interest in it. Just you and the breath right now. And as soon as we do, we become hyper alert of other things. Like there may be feeling in the body. Maybe a sense of jitteriness. Maybe we feel the heat in the body. We suddenly hear the raindrops. They're louder. We can almost get a sense of the solidity of the rain as it hits the deck. It encounters the hardness. We can sense in some way an expansion that we are tethered to the rain. We're tethered to the sounds. We're tethered to all of these elements. The hardness, we can feel it in our sits bones. The air, we pick it up on the inhalation. The water, the exterior water, the raindrops, the interior water, same frequency, same vibration. Just external water, internal water. So we're actually becoming more vibrant, not less. If we're paying attention, pay attention. And we just know if we're taking a long breath or a short breath. We just know if the breath is fine or whether it's coarse. We just know this directly. And now we know whether there is some tightness or tension in our body because we can feel it. We're connected with the feeling of tightness or tension. And wherever we feel that, we make a deliberate now intent to just relax it. There's tightness in the brow, tightness in the cheek, tightness in the shoulders. Maybe our shoulders now suddenly feel like they're hunched. Then we just relax. Any place that we feel tense or tightness, just relaxing that body part. And keeping your awareness on the breath. Just in and out. And as we do that, we have a sense, we do have a sense of fading away. At the moment, it's not all about me. At the moment, there is just a kind of peace that manifests by its own accord. And we get to experience and to know that. And we keep our attention on the breath until there's a sense of joy that begins to arise. That joy comes from the confidence of steadiness. And the simplicity of this. And gradually, little by little, we extend the time of the sitting. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour if you want, 2 hours, however long you want. And when you find yourself sitting for at least an hour, then it would be good for you to start setting your time, your intention, how long you'll sit. And the mind will keep track. It'll just buzz you. If you say 2 hours, it'll buzz you 2 hours. 1 hour, you'll say 1 hour is up. You'll get to know. Okay, so now when we come out of that space and we come back to like our business we have to take care of, right? But we touch a kind of stillness that detaches us from the full throttle influence of the moment or whatever we're dealing with. And we find another place that we can abide. Then after a while, you don't have to go into meditation to abide. You don't have to like assume the posture to that. You just know where it is, and you go there with it. Or when you see yourself starting to spin out, if you will get out of yourself, choose to, then you can go right there. Sometimes we choose to, sometimes we don't. But more and more we will choose to, the more and more we become acquainted with this way of being in the world. Now, something happens later, and that's for another day, so I'm ending right now. But something happens later with this. Once this part has been, yes, would you say? Cultivated, yes. Once this has been cultivated. And that's where you can access, because in that field, there is information. You got to be on the right frequency, though. Remember, I talked Tuesday about, passing through object. You have to be on the same frequency with the object. And so it's like that. There's information. The whole universe is teeming with information. But the information is on its own frequency. And you have to tap into it. When I was fasting and went through, the only way I could eat was I had to find Master Chinyan's frequency. She would say, lunch will be served at 9:30. That wasn't the time. That was the frequency. And I had to find that frequency to eat. There's a lot, We decide what's important. May you be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to you, no danger. May you always be able to meet with the inevitable difficulties of life.